Hello, everyone. In this lecture, we examine how queer theory reshapes the study of the human past through archaeology. Chapter 3 explores how archaeologists interpret gender, sexuality, and identity, and how those interpretations are often shaped by modern assumptions about what is considered normal. Archaeology is the study of past human societies through material evidence such as tools, artwork, architecture, and human remains, because archaeologists interpret physical evidence rather than written testimony. Their assumptions play an important role in shaping conclusions about past cultures. For much of its history, archaeology relied on modern Western ideas about gender and sexuality when interpreting ancient societies. Researchers frequently assumed that binary categories such as male and female or heterosexual and homosexual existed universally across time and place. Institutions familiar today, including the nuclear family or monogamous relationships, were often projected onto ancient cultures without critical examination. The introduction of feminist scholarship in the late 20th century began to challenge these assumptions. Building on feminist critiques, queer theory entered archaeological research more prominently in the early 21st century. Rather than searching for ancient versions of modern identities, queer archaeology questions the categories used to interpret the past itself. Queer theory encourages archaeologists to examine how classification systems shape knowledge. Categories such as sex, gender, and sexuality are not neutral descriptions. They are created within specific cultural contexts and reflect particular social expectations. One major focus of queer archaeology is the constructed nature of biological sex. Although sex is often assumed to exist as a simple binary, archaeological and biological research demonstrates significant variation in human bodies. Scholars note that characteristics used to determine sex, such as chromosomes, hormones, or skeletal features, do not always align neatly into male or female categories. Some researchers therefore describe sex as existing along a continuum rather than as two fixed types. Archaeological evidence also reveals that ideas about sex and gender have changed historically. Earlier medical traditions sometimes viewed male and female bodies as variations of a shared human form rather than fundamentally different biological types. This historical variability demonstrates that even biological interpretations are influenced by cultural beliefs. Queer approaches further challenge the distinction between sex as biological and gender as social. Influenced by scholars such as Judith Butler, archaeologists increasingly recognize that bodies themselves are interpreted through cultural frameworks. As a result, both sex and gender can be understood as shaped by social meaning rather than existing independently of culture. These insights affect how archaeologists interpret material evidence. For example, discoveries of women buried with weapons have sometimes been treated as anomalies requiring special explanation because they contradict modern expectations about gender roles. A queer archaeological perspective instead asks whether such interpretations reveal more about contemporary assumptions than about past societies. Artistic and religious imagery from ancient Mesoamerican cultures provides additional examples. Archaeological representations include female warriors, mixed gender figures, and deities displaying characteristics associated with multiple genders. Rather than depicting deviation, these images may have represented authority, power, or sacred roles within those societies. Queer archaeology also emphasizes intersectionality. Identity in the past, as in the present, was shaped by multiple factors, including age, occupation, social status, ethnicity, and religion. Gender and sexuality were only part of broader social identities and may not always have held the same importance that modern societies assign to them. Importantly, archaeologists now question whether sexuality itself functioned as a primary identity category in ancient societies. Modern understandings of sexual identity may not map neatly onto historical contexts. Assuming that sexuality held the same meaning in the past risks misunderstanding archaeological evidence. Overall, queer archaeology challenges heteronormativity, or the assumption that heterosexual and binary gender systems are universal. By questioning these assumptions, archaeologists develop more flexible methods for interpreting ancient lives and social organization. The chapter ultimately argues that studying the past requires continual reflection on the categories we use to interpret evidence. Queer theory does not simply add new identities into archaeological narratives. Instead, it transforms how knowledge about the past is produced. Understanding queer archaeology helps us recognize that interpretations of history are shaped not only by evidence, but also by contemporary cultural expectations. By challenging normative assumptions, archaeologists can better appreciate the diversity and complexity of human experience across time. As we continue in this course, this chapter reminds us that studying gender and sexuality is not only about the present, it also involves reconsidering how we understand humanity's past.